Greetings and salutations. This is Tracy. I am Tracy. This is Bedtime Stories. And we are reading the Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And we are on Canto number 16, Pau-Puk-Keewis. You shall hear how Pau-Puk-Keewis, he the handsome Yanadezi, whom the people called the Stormfool, vexed the village with disturbance. You shall hear of all his mischief, and his flight from Hiawatha, and his wondrous transmigrations, and the end of his adventures. On the shores of Gitchigumi, on the dunes of Nagawaju, by the shining Big Sea water, stood the lodge of Pau-Puk-Keewis. It was he who in his frenzy whirled these drifting sands together, on the dunes of Nagawaju, when among the guests assembled, he so merrily and madly danced at Hiawatha's wedding, danced the beggar's dance to please them. Now in search of new adventures, from his lodge went Pau-Puk-Keewis, came with speed into the village, found the young men all assembled in the lodge of old Iago, listening to his monstrous stories, to his wondrous adventures. He was telling them the story of Ojig, the summer maker, how he made a hole in heaven, how he climbed up into heaven and let out the summer weather, the perpetual pleasant summer, how the otter first essayed it, how the beaver, lynx, and badger tried in turn the great achievement. From the summit of the mountain, smote their fists against the heavens, smote against the sky their foreheads, cracked the sky but could not break it. How the wolverine, uprising, made him ready for the encounter, bent his knees down like a squirrel, drew his arms back like a cricket. Once he leaped, said old Iago, once he leaped, and lo, above him bent the sky as ice in rivers when the waters rise beneath it. Twice he leapt, and lo, above him cracked the sky as ice in rivers when the freshest is at its highest. When the freshet is at highest. I don't know what that is. Thrice he leapt, and lo above him broke the shattered sky asunder, and he disappeared within it. And Ojig, the fisher weasel, with a bound, went in behind him. Hark you, shouted Pau-Puk-Keewis as he entered at the doorway. I'm tired of all this talking, tired of old Iago's stories, tired of Hiawatha's wisdom. Here is something to amuse you, better than this endless talking. Then from out his pouch of wolfskin forth he drew, with solemn manner, all the game of bowl encounters, pugassing with 13 pieces, white on one side where they painted, and vermilion on the other. 2 kennebeeks, or great serpents, 2 iniwug, or wedge men, 1 great war club, puggamaugan, and 1 slender fish, the kigo, 4 round pieces, ozawabeeks, and 3 shishiwug, or ducklings. All were made of bone and painted, all except for the ozawabeeks. These were brass, on one side burnished, and were black on the other. In a wooden bowl he placed them, shook and jostled them around, threw them on the ground before him, thus exclaiming and explaining, red side up are all the pieces, and 1 great kennebeek standing. On the bright side of a brass piece, on the burnished ozawabeek, 13 tens, and 8 are counted. Then again he shook the pieces, shook and jostled them together, threw them on the ground before him, still exclaiming and explaining. White are both the great kennebeeks, white the iniwug, the wedgemen, red are all the other pieces, 4 tens, and an 8 are counted. Thus he taught the game of hazard, thus displayed it and explained it, running through its various chances, various changes, various meanings. 20 curious eyes stared at him, full of eagerness, stared at him. Many games, said old Iago, many games of skill and hazard have I seen in different nations, have I played in different countries. He who plays with old Iago must have very nimble fingers, though you think yourself so skilled. I can beat you, Pau-Puk-Keewis. I can even give you lessons in your game of bowl encounters. So they sat and played together. All the old men and the young men played for dresses, weapons, wampum, played till midnight, played till morning, played until the Yanadezi, till the cunning Palpakiwas of all their treasures had despoiled them. Of their best of all their dresses, skirts of deerskin, robes of ermine, belts of wampum, crests of feathers, warlike weapons, pipes and pouches, 20 eyes glared wildly at him, like the eyes of wolves glared at him. Said the lucky Palpakiwas, "In my wigwam I am lonely. In my wanderings and adventures I have need of a companion. Fain would have a Mishinawa, an attendant, a pipe-bearer. I will venture all these winnings, all these garments heaped about me, all this wampum, all these feathers, on a single throw will venture, all against the young man yonder. 'Twas a youth of 16 summers. 'Twas the nephew of Iago. Face in a mist, the people called him. As the fire burns in a pipe head, dusky red beneath the ashes, so beneath his shaggy eyebrows glowed the eyes of old Iago. Ugh, he answered very fiercely. Ugh, they answered all and each one. Seized the wooden bowl the old man, closely in his bony fingers clutched the fatal bowl. Onagon shook it fiercely and with fury made the pieces ring together, and he threw them down before him. Red were both the great Kinnibeaks, red the Inuwug, the wedgemen, red the Sheshubwang, the ducklings, black the 4 brass Ozabubeaks. White alone the fish, the Kigo, only 5 the pieces counted. Then the smiling Palpakiwas shook the bowl and threw the pieces. Lightly in the air he tossed them, and they fell about him scattered. Dark and bright the Ozabeaks, red and white the other pieces, and upright among the others one Iniwug was standing, even as crafty Palpakiwas stood alone among the players, saying, 5 tens, mine the game is. 20 eyes glared at him fiercely, like the eyes of wolves glared at him, as he turned and left the wigwam, followed by his Mishinawa, by the nephew of Iago, by the tall and graceful stripling, bearing in his arms the winnings, shirts of deerskin, robes of ermine, belts of wampum, pipes, and weapons. Carry them, said Palpakiwas, pointing with his fan of feathers, to my wigwam far to eastward, on the dunes of Nagao Waju. Hot and red with smoke and gambling were the eyes of Palpakiwas as he came forth to the freshness of the pleasant summer morning. All the birds were singing gaily, and the streamlets flowing swiftly, and the heart of Palpakiwas sang with pleasure as the birds sing, beat with triumph like the streamlets. And he wandered through the village in the early gray of morning with his fan of turkey feathers, with his plumes and tufts of swan's down, till he reached the furthest wigwam, reaching the lodge of Hiawatha. Silent was it, and deserted. No one met him at the doorway. No one came to bid him welcome, but the birds were singing round it, in and out and round the doorway, hopping, singing, fluttering, feeding, and aloft upon the bridge pole, Kagagi, the king of ravens, sat with fiery eyes and screaming, flapped his wings at Palpakiwas. All are gone, the lodge is empty. Thus it was spake Palpakiwas in his heart, resolving mischief. Gone is wary Hiawatha, gone the silly laughing water, gone Nokomis, the old woman, and the lodge is left unguarded. By the neck he seized the raven, whirled it round him like a rattle, like a medicine pouch he shook it, strangled Kagagi the raven from the ridgepole of the wigwam, left its lifeless body hanging as an insult to its master, as a taunt to Hiawatha. With a stealthy step he entered, round the lodge in wild disorder, threw the household things about him, piled together in confusion, bowls of wood and earthen kettles, robes of buffalo and beaver, skins of otter, lynx, and ermine, as an insult to Nokomis, as a taunt to Minnehaha. Then departed Palpakiwas, whistling, singing through the forest, whistling gaily to the squirrels, who from hollow boughs above him dropped their acorn shells upon him, singing gaily to the wood birds, who from out the leafy darkness answered with a song as merry. Then he climbed the rocky headlands, looking o'er the Gitche Gumee, perched himself upon their summit, waiting full of mirth and mischief, the return of Hiawatha. Stretched upon his back he lay there, far below him splashed the waters, splashed and washed the dreamy waters. Far above him swam the heavens, swam the dizzy, dreamy heavens. Round him hovered, fluttered, rustled Hiawatha's mountain chickens. Flockwise swept and wheeled about him, almost brushed him with their pinions. And he killed them as he lay there, slaughtered them by tens and twenties, threw their bodies down the headland, threw them on the beach below him, till at length Caoshik, the seagull, perched upon a crag above him, shouting, "It is Pau-Puk-Keewis, he is slaying us by hundreds. Send a message to our brother. Tidings, send to Hiawatha." We're going to continue going because that ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. So this is Canto number 17, The Hunting of Pau-Puk-Keewis. Full of wrath was Hiawatha when he came into the village, found the people in confusion, heard of all the misdemeanors, all the malice and the mischief of the cunning Pau-Puk-Keewis. Hard his breath came through his nostrils, through his teeth he buzzed and muttered words of anger and resentment, hot and humming like a hornet. "I will slay this Pau-Puk-Keewis, slay this mischief maker," said he. "Not so long and wide the world is, not so rude and rough the way is, that my wrath shall not attain him, that my vengeance shall not reach him." Then in swift pursuit departed Hiawatha and the hunters on the trail of Pau-Puk-Keewis, through the forest where he passed it, to the headlands where he rested. But they found not Pau-Puk-Keewis, only in the trampled grasses, in the whortleberry bushes, found the couch where he had rested, found the impress of his body. From the lowlands far beneath them, from the muskoday, the meadow, Pau-Puk-Keewis turning backward, made a gesture of defiance, made a gesture of derision, and aloud cried Hiawatha from the summit of the mountains, "Not so long and wide the world is, not so rude and rough the way is, but my wrath shall overtake you, and my vengeance shall attain you." Over rock and over river, through bush and brake and forest, ran the cunning Pau-Puk-Keewis, like an antelope he bounded, till he came upon a streamlet in the middle of the forest, to a streamlet still and tranquil, that had overflowed its margin, to a dam made by the beavers, to a pond of quiet water, where knee-deep the trees were standing, where the water lilies floated, where the rushes waved and whispered. On the dam stood Pau-Puk-Keewis, on the dam of trunks and branches, through whose chinks the water spouted, o'er whose summit flowed the streamlet. From the bottom rose the beaver, looked with two great eyes of wonder, eyes that seemed to ask a question at the stranger Pau-Puk-Keewis. On the dam stood Pau-Puk-Keewis, o'er his ankles flowed the streamlet, flowed the bright and silvery water, and he spake unto the beaver, with a smile he spake in this wise: "O my friend Amik the beaver, cool and pleasant is the water. Let me dive into the water, let me rest there in your lodges, change me, too, into a beaver." Cautiously replied the beaver, with reserve he thus made answer: "Let me first consult the others, let me ask the other beavers." Down he sank into the water, heavily sank he, as a stone sinks. Down among the leaves and branches, brown and matted at the bottom. On the dam stood Pau-Puk-Keewis, o'er his ankles flowed the streamlet, spouted through the chinks below him, dashed upon the stones beneath him, spread serene and calm before him, and the sunshine and the shadows fell in flecks and gleams upon him, fell in little shining patches through the waving, rustling branches. From the bottom rose the beavers, silently above the surface, rose one head and then another, till the pond seemed full of beavers, full of black and shining faces. To the beavers Pau-Puk-Keewis spake entreating, thus in this wise: "Very pleasant is your dwelling, O my friends, and safe from danger. Can you not, with all your cunning, all your wisdom and contrivance, change me, too, into a beaver?" "Yes," cried Amik the beaver, he the king of all the beavers, let yourself slide down among us, down into the tranquil water. Down into the pond among them silently sank Powpuk-Keewis. Black became his shirt of deerskin, black his moccasins and leggings, and a broad black tail behind him spread his foxtails and his fringes. He was changed into a beaver. "Make me large," said Powpuk-Keewis. "Make me large, and make me larger, larger than the other beavers." "Yes," the beaver chief responded. "When our lodge below you enter, in our wigwam we will make you 10 times larger than the others." Thus into the clear brown water silently sank Powpuk-Keewis, found the bottom covered o'er with branches of trees and branches, hoards of food against the winter, piles and heaps against the famine. Found the lodge with arching doorway, leading into spacious chambers. Here they made him large and larger, made him largest of the beavers, 10 times larger than the others. "You shall be our ruler," said they, "king and chief of all the beavers." But not long ago had Powpuk-Keewis sat in state among the beavers. Not long had Powpuk-Keewis sat in state among the beavers, when there came a voice of warning from the watchman at his station, in the water flags and lilies, saying, "Here is Hiawatha, Hiawatha with his hunters." Then they heard a cry above them, heard a shouting and a tramping, heard a crashing and a rushing, and the water round and o'er them sank and sucked away in eddies, and they knew their dam was broken. On the lodge's roof the hunters leaped and broke it all asunder, streamed the sunshine through the crevice, sprang the beavers through the doorway, hid themselves in deeper water in the channel of the streamlet. But the mighty Powpuk-Keewis could not pass beneath the doorway. He was puffed with pride and feeding. He was swollen like a bladder. Through the roof looked Hiawatha, cried aloud, "Oh, Powpuk-Keewis, vain are all your craft and cunning, vain your manifold disguises. Well, I know you, Powpuk-Keewis." With their clubs they beat and bruised him, beat to death poor Powpuk-Keewis, pounded him as maize is pounded, till his skull was crushed to pieces. 6 tall hunters, lithe and limber, bore him home on poles and branches, bore the body of the beaver, but the ghost, the Jebi in him, thought and felt as Powpuk-Keewis, still lived on as Powpuk-Keewis. And it fluttered, strove and struggled, waving hither, waving thither, as the curtains of a wigwam struggle with their thongs of deerskin when the wintry wind is blowing, till it drew itself together, till it rose up from the body, till it took the form and feathers of the cunning Powpuk-Keewis, vanishing into the forest. But the wary Hiawatha saw the figure ere it vanished, saw the form of Powpuk-Keewis glide into the soft blue shadow of the pine trees of the forest, toward the squares of white beyond it, toward an opening in the forest. Like a wind it rushed and panted, bending all the boughs before it, and behind it, as the rain comes, came the steps of Hiawatha. To a lake with many islands came the breathless Powpuk-Keewis, where among the water lilies, Pishniku, yeah, we're just going to go with that. Where among the water lilies, Pishniku, the brant, was sailing. I don't know what a brant is. Through the tufts of rushes floating, steering through the reedy islands. Now their broad black beaks they lifted, now they plunged beneath the water, now they darkened in the shadow, now they brightened in the sunshine. "Pishikina," cried Powpuk-Keewis, "Pishikina, my brothers," said he, "change me to a brant with plumage, with a shining neck and feathers. Make me large, and make me larger, 10 times larger than the others." Straightway to a brant they changed him, with 2 huge and dusky pinions, and a bosom smooth and rounded, with a bill like 2 great paddles, made him larger than the others, 10 times larger than the largest, just as shouting from the forest on the shore stood Hiawatha. Up they rose with cry and clamor, with a whir and beat of pinions, rose up from the reedy islands, from the water flags and lilies, and they said to Powpuk-Keewis, "In your flying, look not downward. Take good heed and look not downward, lest some strange mischance should happen, lest some great mishap befall you. Fast and far they fled to northward, fast and far through mist and sunshine, fed among the moors and fenlands, slept among the reeds and rushes. On the morrow as they journeyed, buoyed and lifted by the south wind, wafted onward by the south wind, blowing fresh and strong behind them, rose a sound of human voices, rose a clamor from beneath them, from the lodges of a village, from the people miles beneath them. For the people of the village saw the flock of brant with wonder, saw the wings of Palpatkiwas flapping far up in the ether, broader than 2 doorway curtains. Palpatkiwas heard the shouting, knew the voice of Hiawatha, knew the outcry of Iago, and forgetful of the warning, drew his neck in and looked downward. And the wind that blew beneath him caught his mighty fan of feathers, sent him wheeling, whirling downward. All in vain did Palpatkiwas struggle to regain his balance. Whirling round and downward, he beheld in turn the village, and in turn the flock above him, saw the village coming nearer and the flock receding further, heard the voices growing louder, heard the shouting and the laughter, saw no more the flocks above him, only saw the earth beneath him. Dead out of the empty heaven, dead among the shouting people, with a heavy sound and sullen, fell the brant with broken pinions. But his soul, his ghost, his shadow, still survived, as Palpatkiwas took again the form and features of the handsome Yenadezi, and again went rushing onward, followed fast by Hiawatha, crying, "Not so wide the world is, not so long and rough the way is, but my wrath shall overtake you, but my vengeance shall attain you." And so near he came, so near him, that his hand was stretched to seize him, his right hand to seize and hold him, when the cunning Palpatkiwas whirled and spun about in circles, fanned the air into a whirlwind, danced the dust and leaves about him, and amid the whirling eddies sprang into a hollow oak tree, changed himself into a serpent, gliding out through root and rubbish. With his right hand Hiawatha smote amain the hollow oak tree, rent it into shreds and splinters, left it lying there in fragments, but in vain, for Palpatkiwas, once again in human figure, full in sight, ran on before him, sped away in gust and whirlwind on the shores of Gitchigumi, westward by the big sea water, came unto the rocky headlands, to the pictured rocks of sandstone, looking over lake and landscape, and the old man of the mountain, he the Manito of mountains, opened wide his rocky doorways, opened wide his deep abysses, giving Palpatkiwas shelter in his caverns deep and dreary, bidding Palpatkiwas welcome to his gloomy lodge of sandstone. There without stood Hiawatha, found the doorways closed against him. With his mittens, Minjikawan, I hate those mittens, Minjikawan smote great caverns in the sandstone, cried aloud in tones and thunder, "Open, I am Hiawatha!" But the old man of the mountain opened not, and made no answer from the silent crags of sandstone, from the gloomy rock abysses. Then he raised his hands to heaven, calling, imploring on the tempest, called Weywasimo, the lightning and the thunder, Animiki, and they came with night and darkness, sweeping down the big sea water from the distant thunder mountains, and the trembling Palpatkiwas heard the footsteps of the thunder, saw the red eyes of the lightning, was afraid, and crouched and trembled. Then Weywasimo, the lightning, smote the doorway of the caverns, with his war club smote the doorways, smote the jutting crags of sandstone, and the thunder, Animiki, shouted down into the caverns, saying, "Where is Palpatkiwas?" And the crags fell, and beneath them, dead among the rocky ruins, lay the cunning Palpatkiwas, lay the handsome Yenadezi, slain in his own human figure. Ended were his wild adventures, ended were his tricks and gambols, ended all his craft and cunning, ended all his mischief-making, all his gambling and his dancing, all his wooing of the maidens. Then the noble Hiawatha took his soul, his ghost, his shadow, spake and said, "O Palpatkiwas, Never more in human figure shall you search for new adventures. Never more with jest and laughter dance with dust and leaves and whirlwinds. But above there in the heavens you shall soar and sail in circles. I will change you to a eagle, to Kenyu, the great war eagle, chief of all the fowls with feathers, chief of Hiawatha's chickens. And the name of Palpatkiwis lingers still among the people, lingers still among the singers, and among the storytellers. And in winter, when the snowflakes whirl in eddies round the lodges, when the wind in gusty tumult, or the smoke flue pipes and whistles, there they cry, comes Palpatkiwis. He is dancing through the village. He is dancing with his harvest.